Welcome to this explainer, where we are going to unpack something absolutely fascinating. We're looking at a profound psychological shift that is completely driving India's booming startup and IPO ecosystem right now. For generations, the dominant narrative in India was pretty simple. Study hard, secure a stable job, and just play it safe. But beneath the surface of all these massive financial headlines and the ringing bells at the stock exchange, there is a totally different story unfolding. It isn't just an economic transformation we're seeing, it's a deeply psychological one. An entire generation is literally shifting from being job seekers to job creators, and they're completely redefining the future of the nation in the process.
It all really starts with one fundamental question. Think about this for a second. Why should you spend your entire life building somebody else's dream? Now, this isn't just some fleeting thought people have on a Monday morning. This exact question is currently redefining the very definition of success for modern Indian youth. Back in the day, landing a government job meant ultimate security, right? And a corporate job meant high status. But today, young people aren't just looking for a steady income. They're increasingly demanding autonomy, purpose, true ownership, and they want active participation in the actual value they help create.
To put that into perspective, imagine an ambitious young person back in, say, 1985. The path was super linear. You get an education, secure a government or management job, earn a salary, buy a house, and eventually retire. The job was the final destination. But for a 25-year-old today, her path is all about possibility. She's asking, can I build a product? Can I earn equity? Can my idea actually become a legacy that continues long after I leave? Security is obviously still valued for sure, but it is now powerfully combined with this intense desire for freedom, identity, and ownership.
Because there is this huge visceral gap between just saying, I work here, and saying, I am building this. It's kind of like the difference between cleaning a house you're only renting versus renovating a home that you actually own. I mean, you might be performing the exact same physical tasks, painting the walls, fixing the plumbing, but psychologically, the meaning is completely different. When people feel true ownership, they develop a profound, almost emotional connection with the outcome of their work.
So, how do companies actually capture that renovating my own home energy? Well, this psychological transformation relies on a really critical tool: employee stock ownership plans, or ESOPs for short. Startups figured something incredible out. If you want to harness that powerful energy, you have to give talented people a literal stake in the future. With ESOPs, the whole implicit message changes. An employee isn't just being told, hey, here's your monthly compensation. Instead, the message becomes, if we create something really valuable together, you get to participate in that value. It literally transforms an employee into a builder.
And this sets off what we call a beautiful multiplier effect. When you empower just one person to build a business, they initially hire, let's say, 10 employees, then 100, then 1,000. But here is where the magic happens. Eventually, some of those empowered employees leave to start their own companies, and they're fueled by the equity they've earned and the skills they've picked up. So the original founder hasn't just created a single business, they've effectively created future entrepreneurs. You enable one person to build a business, and you might just be creating jobs for generations to come.
And what's incredibly exciting to me is that this isn't just happening in the massive tech hubs anymore. Technology has fundamentally decentralized opportunity to places like Lucknow, Jaipur, Coimbatore, Indore, and Nagpur. You no longer need to pack up your entire life and move to Mumbai or Bengaluru just to participate in this economic transformation. A designer in Indore, or maybe an agricultural entrepreneur in Nagpur, can now build businesses for a national or even a global market right from their hometown. That is a game changer.
This decentralization triggers a massive cultural ripple effect. Think about it. When a young person in a Tier 2 or Tier 3 city sees someone from their exact same background successfully build a company, a massive psychological barrier just shatters. Yesterday, the mindset was, well, people like us don't become entrepreneurs. But tomorrow, it instantly becomes, if they can do it, perhaps I can too. One visible, local success story can completely change the ambition of thousands of minds in that community. The idea literally spreads like wildfire.
And this brings us to the deepest change of all. Traditional wealth in India often followed a pretty stagnant loop, right? You inherit it, you preserve it, and you pass it down again. But this new entrepreneurial economy operates as a completely self-sustaining ecosystem. It starts with creation and growth, which leads to ownership. An employee who becomes wealthy through those ESOPs we talked about, they often turn into an angel investor. A successful founder goes on to mentor the next founder. Capital circulates, and wealth actively creates more wealth-producing activity. Now hold on a second, because I want to offer a really crucial caveat here. We shouldn't just romanticize entrepreneurship or tell everyone to suddenly quit their jobs. The true goal here isn't just some immature, I don't want a boss mentality. It's actually about an ownership of responsibility. Becoming a founder means taking on immense, unrelenting responsibility. You've got employees depending on you, investors demanding results, and customers expecting reliability. The real shift isn't just employee versus entrepreneur. It's moving from passive work to deeply meaningful, responsible participation.
And that brings us to the philosophical core of this explainer. It challenges us to ask ourselves, how will you become wealthy? By creating value or by extracting it? Look, a business absolutely must make money to survive. We all know that. But there is a massive ethical and economic difference between asking how much money can I extract from people versus how much value can I create for them. A genuinely good business makes money precisely because it solves a very real problem for other people.
To really understand this, let's look at a somewhat forgotten insight from the Scottish philosopher Adam Smith. People often mistake capitalism as simply letting selfishness run wild. But Smith's deeper lesson was that individual ambition only becomes socially constructive when institutions, and our mindsets, channel it toward creating actual value rather than exploitation. So, a young person's desire to become wealthy isn't inherently bad at all. The system works when that ambition is directed at building things that society genuinely needs.
You can actually see that value creation happening right now across so many fields: clean energy, affordable healthcare, agricultural technology, financial inclusion. Today's young entrepreneurs increasingly want their work to answer a deeper question. Why am I even doing this? Money alone just doesn't provide enough meaning anymore. But when an entrepreneur builds a business in one of these critical sectors, their company literally becomes a vehicle for solving deep societal problems. They get to achieve both profit and purpose simultaneously.
Now, interestingly enough, this hyper-modern entrepreneurial mindset actually connects beautifully back to ancient Indian philosophy found in the Bhagavad Gita. You have a right to your action, but not to the fruits of action. In the context of a fast-paced modern startup, this doesn't mean you just ignore your financial results. What it means is your core psychological focus should be on doing meaningful work incredibly well. Create, build, solve, and contribute. The financial reward? That's simply a byproduct that comes later. And honestly, this is a far healthier psychology than just obsessing over how quickly you can get rich.
The Gita also offers this really beautiful concept called Loka Sangraha, which means acting for the welfare and stability of society. This gives us the absolute perfect framework for modern entrepreneurship because it marries individual ambition right alongside social responsibility. Imagine a founder who simultaneously asks two questions: how much can I create, and who actually benefits from what I create? That specific combination of ambition and public welfare is exactly the kind of entrepreneurship that will drive an entire nation forward.
Which leads us to a really vital distinction we need to make: wealth versus prosperity. This is the mature evolution from me to we. The immature version of entrepreneurship says, I want to become rich, which creates wealth. That's simply what an individual possesses. But the mature version says, I want to become successful by making other people's lives better, and that creates prosperity, which is what society collectively experiences. When millions of young Indians are out there solving real problems, that prosperity spreads way, way beyond just the founders themselves. So how does this all connect back to the grand finale of the business life cycle, the IPO? Well, an initial public offering is so much more than just a financial transaction on the stock market. It begins with one single idea, turns into a startup, generates ESOP wealth for those early employees, and then culminates in public ownership. It's really the final stage of a much larger psychological journey of collective ownership, where ordinary investors can now own a piece of the value that was created, ultimately funding even more innovation.
I want to leave you with something to really chew on. India's next economic revolution may not begin with money. It may actually begin with a change in the way its youth think about ownership. A nation doesn't truly advance just because a few individuals accumulate a ton of wealth. It advances when its people shift from being passive consumers to active creators, from job seekers to opportunity makers. So the next time you see a massive IPO make the headlines, remember, it's not just a bell ringing on Wall Street or Dalal Street. It is the sound of a completely new psychology emerging. The only question left is, what will you choose to build?